Hello, my loves. This is a very rare occurrence, but I felt compelled at the end of that conversation to sit and record an introduction before this episode for two reasons. Number one, and it's a big call, but that was honestly one of my favorite conversations I have had with an expert guest. Bisher is one of the most down-to-earth, genuine, authentic, passionate people, men, that I've met as an expert in their asset class. And I've met a lot of people over my privileged, blessed lifetime. So there's that. I wanted to really just be like, strap in, enjoy this episode. But number two, I had been approached, you'll hear this in my intro, I had been approached by Stormrake, by two amazing guys. Well, actually one, Sam. It was Sam. And because I had been naturally, quietly, privately behind the scenes, referring you all to them with no affiliation, no kickback, nothing like that. It's just they're a phenomenal company. They're a fantastic service and I believe and back them. So if you needed to purchase crypto, that's where I was sending you in my DMs. And Sam from Stormrake personally reached out and basically was like, "Hi, I'm Sam. Like, who are you? Why are you sending all these people to us? And thank you. Like, we really appreciate it. Would you jump on a call?" And so I said, of course. So I jumped on a call with Sam and Brody and they said, like, become an affiliate, like sign up, like you're referring all these remarkable people to us. Like we would love to do that for you. So I absolutely said yes. It was something I was already doing. So I want you to know if at the end of this episode, or at any point in the episode, you get inspired to give Stormrake a call or become a client of theirs, or honestly just have a discovery call with them, or you're like, nah, I'm switching. I know I'm going to stop buying off exchanges, which I have done, and move across to them. Then by all means, I would love if you, of course, if you did hear about them from me, mention my name. That's what they said to do, or use the link that is in the show notes of this episode. I will wrap it up because I just want you to get into the episode. It is so good. Bisher is incredible in the way he just answered everything that I had my heart set on to get answered, and having a chat about crypto. It's my favorite asset class. So tune in, strap in, enjoy, and I will see you in the episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Anything Goes with Anna Rose. And I am very excited, as I always am. I feel like I am always excited every episode, but I am because I genuinely bring you, in my opinion, the best guests. And today is no different. I have an incredible guy who I have just met online, technically, but I have known about for a very long time. And I was connected to Bisher from Stormrake through a man who everyone knows I love and trust and have listened to for over a decade, Adam Hudson. And Adam, on his podcast, was talking about Stormrake and Bisher, and had Bisher on his podcast multiple times. And so that's how I got to know the company Stormrake and really listened to Bisher quite a lot through other people's podcasts, and always wanted him on. And I'm also known as a crypto girl. That's my asset class. I love it. I've loved it since 2017. And so when a lot of people have come to me, I was naturally referring you all to Stormrake with absolutely no necessary connection like this. And Stormrake themselves, a phenomenal legend, as Bisher knows, Sam on the team actually personally sent me an email and was like, "Who are you?" "Hi, I'm Sam. I'm from Stormrake. We're the company that you keep amazingly referring. Would you like to jump on a call?" And I was like, "I'd love to." And then that is how this whole connection has come to be. So Bisher, welcome to the potty.
Thanks for having me on. And it's great to hear my guys are being proactive, because we love serving the community and working with other people who understand the crypto mission and ethos as well. So I love that story. I love that connection as well. That's great.
Yeah, they're legends. We jumped on, and then I was on a Google Meet with them, him and Brody, and legends, absolute legends. But it really is an honor to have you on the podcast today, and I am so grateful. And something I love about you, again, I'm going to say all the things that I've just experienced now, but we jumped on to connect, and it was our first time connecting, and you just spent some time literally just getting to know me, which was very beautiful. So thank you, Bisher. You've got a heart of gold. But we mentioned something off camera that I want to start at, which is basically, I was saying how it is unusual for women to be in the crypto space. And you said, yeah, it's, it is rare for women to be in tech and finance. Or, sorry, you said finances, and I always think tech and finances. So let's talk about that. Like, I kind of want to, because you've got an amazing budgie on the team. I think that's who you said was her name.
Yeah, Cushy, she's awesome.
Cushy, sorry, I'm like Budgie Cushy.
Yeah,
But no, it is really powerful. And I suppose where I want to go with that, just to kick it straight off, is I am very passionate about crypto. My story goes, you've sort of briefly just heard it. I fell in love with the blockchain back in 2017 when, this word Ethereum kept getting put in front of me. And actually everybody I knew was screaming scam. And like, it's a scam, the blockchain's a scam, crypto's a scam, it's all a scam. And if anyone ever says that to me, I'm always curious. I'm like, beautiful, okay, it's probably legit then, let me have a look at it. And so, true story. And so I literally...
Prairie and investing, it's the best.
Yeah, I literally started to look into it because I was like, what is this scam? I want to know more about this scam. And I fell in love with the ideology of blockchain and decentralization and, less government control, but we can also touch on that because I know legislation is changing. But that's how I got into it. And so I would love to know, and it is rare for a female to be in it, but I would love to know some of your story and how you have come to sit at this desk in this firm and be Bisher from Stormrake.
I appreciate that. So, and the one thing I want to just start with is I appreciate the privilege of being on the platform and having some time to share the story and the journey as well. So I started out in finance about 12 years ago. I didn't go through a traditional pathway. So when I finished high school, I went straight into sales because I just really wanted to start making money right away. I was already selling what my coordinator described as contraband on school campus, which was like things like gift cards and like energy drinks and all kinds of other things that I shouldn't have been selling at school. But I fell in love with the art of sales very early on when I was 16, 17. So when I finished high school, I went straight into sales. And one thing that I started learning about very quickly was foreign exchange. And there was one of my mates who went down a traditional route, ended up in uni, graduated university and ended up at an FX brokerage, foreign exchange brokerage, said, mate, you're an absolute weapon. You know how to talk to people. Let's get you on the phones at our firm. That was going back to 2015 now, so over a decade ago, and fell in love with trading, finance, financial markets. And so I spent 5 years developing and earning my tuition through the markets. I'd be trading with clients, learning how to trade, getting them into many different positions, because as an FX and CFD broker, you trade across multiple asset classes, foreign exchange being one of them, equities, commodities, you trade across quite a wide basket of assets. And then in 2016, I came across Bitcoin. And it was mentioned in a couple of chats that I was having with some clients. And then I discovered a little bit more about it online. So I went down that rabbit hole and started buying Bitcoin back in 2016, just a little bit, just to kind of get my feet wet, understand what it is. Because I've always said, if you're going to do something, the best way you're going to learn about it is through experience. And so I just got myself into it. And then I fell in love with Bitcoin, digital assets, blockchain. I was like, this is epic. This is a revolution. And so in 2019, I started working for a different crypto brokerage firm. So I went from FX to crypto for the first time in 2019 and started being able to help my clients get themselves fully positioned in things like Bitcoin, Ethereum. Back in the day, Ethereum, I would be able to sell it at $100 a pop. Right, I'd be able to get clients into Bitcoin at $3-4 grand. It was really cool. And now it's like I feel just as excited putting somebody into Bitcoin at 80,000 where we are today as I was at 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 back in the day. So it's been a bit of a journey. And then I came across Stormrake in 22. It was initially just a statistical arbitrage trading desk. So the co-founders, Michael Milmeister and Doug Hemingway, started the firm back in 2019, and they were just trading for themselves. They said that they needed to find a different way to diversify their income, and they decided brokerage was the way to go. And so they decided to work with the best broker in the country, which was myself. So I jumped into the business as the first employee back in 22. FTX, as you know, happened at the end of 22, and we had to have a really tough conversation, myself and the guys, going, are we really going to continue the brokerage business? Do we see it fulfilling its goal? And I said yes. I was emphatically yes, this is going to be an incredible business. So to put my money where my mouth is, I bought into the business at the end of 22, which was a huge success. And, the last 4 years, we went from 100 clients to over 10,000 clients. And just last week, we opened our second office in Dallas. So it was a success, but there was a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. But that's brought me to where we are now in 2026. So we run 2 offices, one in Melbourne, one in Dallas, and we service Australians and Americans as well as Kiwis. But Kiwis are just discount Aussies anyway. I can say
They're
that.
the same.
Yeah, my wife is Kiwi, so I can say that, so it's all good. But yeah, really, it's a fantastic opportunity to be in here. And now I just help people get into Bitcoin. And I did the numbers the other day. Over the last 4 years, I've placed $2.7 billion worth of AUD into Bitcoin over the last 4 years. So it's been a good run.
That's incredible. And I've just realized, I'm like, I need to back it up a little bit. Obviously, I always have the description and a title and all the things. But for people that don't know what Stormrake is, can you please explain that? I should have started with that.
Yeah, let's start there. So we're a digital asset broker. We help our clients buy and sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, other digital assets through simple phone call or email. Because back in the day, there was a number of different platforms. And this isn't to take anything away from the platform providers out there. There's a lot of good names that we use, like Binance, Kraken, Coinbase. They're great. I've got no issues with them. Problem is, though, they don't have any service layer associated with it, and they've got massive spreads associated with it. So what I do is I give the clients a better price than they could get on any given retail exchange, and we give them a better level of service because each of our clients is paired with a dedicated broker. So you're not going to have to figure out who you're dealing with on any given day, whether you're calling in on Monday 3 p.m. or Saturday 7 a.m. You're going to be dealing with the same person over and over and over again. And you've still got a support team to take care of your investments as well, and a platform to self-service through as well. But we've always found that this space, crypto, is fantastic. It's an amazing technology, it's an amazing asset, but it still needs to have a real human touch to it. And whereas a lot of my counterparts and my peers, they focused on tech, platform, self-service. I thought, it would be really cool if we could provide an old world service to a new world asset. And that's where Stormrake comes in.
And I can break it down. So I was just like, in my head, I have 70 million things to say. I want to go back to spread. I'm going to park that for a second because I have listened to you on so many other people's podcasts, and the podcasts you go on are incredible and higher level for sure. Like I was listening to you with Mark DiPolo the other day, who I love, who's also off Unemployable, and that was just a high level entry, and I love that. But the beautiful listener that I have on this podcast is the mum and dad, that is looking for a different alternative and is looking literally for a company like this that probably still has a neighbor and a cousin's girlfriend's, grandparent telling them crypto is a scam, or they're beginning out, but an enormous thing these days is the bank is stopping them. So what I love about Stormrake and why I have been behind the scenes swatting, followers and clients essentially to you is because people come to me and go, because I dollar cost average and I have since 2017. So the bank doesn't really stop me because it's like, well, this bitch is, she's gonna do it anyway. But what I'm coming across to you guys, because firstly, your fees are lower, like the spread, and I want to unpack that a little bit. So we're lower leveling on this podcast, entry level explanations for everyone. And I love that most people these days genuinely are struggling to actually get their money from their institution, aka the bank, into their crypto portfolios, if at all, because banks are stopping us. I literally had it the other day because I had a new account and I was putting a larger sum across, and they stopped me. The audacity. And they called me. It's like, oh no, I had to call them. And I was like, don't you dare. I have done this for almost 10 years. And luckily, I'm one of the lucky ones who they were like, yeah, okay, you've called us, we can release it. But I know when Ryan was starting out, because he was brand new to it when he met me 3 years ago, he had to fight with his bank to
go in branch. You have to do all kinds of things. It's nasty.
Yeah. Whereas what I love about your service is, and it is absolutely unapologetic shameless plug, is it's this safe, easy entry point essentially into investing. If people choose crypto as their asset class, because I always talk about, Maybe property is your asset class. Maybe shares is your asset class. But for me, it's definitely crypto. So let's talk about that then, because there are still, like, I'm the perfect example. I have been investing on a crypto platform since 2017, and there are fees associated with that. So I can look at that and go, oh, well, I'll get, it's going to charge me whatever, $100 or $200 or $500 for this particular transaction. But with you guys, you take what's the percentage?
2%.
I was going to say 2, but I didn't want to get it wrong. 2%, yeah, on the whole transaction.
Yeah, on the transaction value itself. So 10 grand works out to be $200.
Yeah. And the spread, can you unpack that? Like, what does that mean for the layman person?
Let's use a live example right now. So I won't name names because I don't like to throw any of my competitors under a bus. But let's take one of the largest exchanges in Australia. Right now, you can buy from them at around 113,500 per Bitcoin. Right, that's the price of Bitcoin. I can do it on Ethereum as well. But just let's use BTC
Bitcoin,
as it's the
yeah.
Mac Daddy.
Yeah.
113.5 is what your buy price would be at Old Nate, big exchange down the road. Whereas with us, you can get the exact same Bitcoin at 111,800, right? So nearly $2,000 per Bitcoin cheaper than going in and doing it yourself. And the reason what we call that's called like a spread or a price premium, because the spot price or the market price of what you're buying might be, let's say here, 113. They put on a premium at 113,800 or 114, depending on how much they bake in on their exchange. And oftentimes you're also having to deal with slippage. I'll unpack that as well. But yeah, usually what spread or premium is spot prices here of any asset. Let's call the asset $1, but you're buying at $1.05, $1.06. So you're buying above the market price, so that the market price has to move at least to $1.05 for you to be in break even, for example. So that's what spread is. Slippage is another thing where you might see the price at 113.5 on Bitcoin. You might want to buy 20 grand. There might be only $3,000 on offer at 113.5. So then the other $7,000 or the other $13,000 gets filled at a much higher price as well, which is what is known as slippage. So for us, we're quite cognizant of, there are a lot of hidden fees that a lot of platforms charge or pass on, or there's just things that people aren't aware of when you're executing trades. Are you getting spread? Are you having slippage? Are you paying a price premium? These are the things that we like to be competitive on, because we're not cheap in the traditional sense. Like, our fee is 2%. People usually go, whoa, that's a big fee. But we're baking in everything into the one transaction fee, so that way you're not having to pay for these spreads and price premiums and other fees that come along the way that they don't show you. We'd much rather be transparent in our charging and get our clients the best price, because what we operate as is a true aggregator. So let's say, imagine you go to a mortgage broker. A good mortgage broker shouldn't be just facing one institution to get you your rates. They should be facing a myriad of different institutions, and sometimes bank lenders, non-bank lenders. That's how they can get you the best mortgage rate available in the market. We operate the same way as a crypto broker. We aggregate across 20 different exchanges. Whoever is giving us the best price at the time of the client's request, that's who gets our business. So when you onboard with Stormrake, it's like you open up 20 exchange accounts, but you have one relationship and one account manager. So it makes your life a bit easier.
It does. And I forget the name, I forget who mine is, but they called me the other day and I was like, this is outrageous. Like, this is, my exchange has never done this in 10 years. So
we value your business, Anna. We want to work with you. So, and again, like, there's so much volatility in this space, which is not a bad thing. I don't say volatility is your friend, but when we're dealing in a volatile asset class, you want somebody that you can call or can call on you whenever there's things that are happening, so that way you can make decisive, quick actions when the price is presenting an attractive opportunity.
Can I actually, do you know what's interesting? And I'm like, oh, I got the boss. I can ask him, because I know you do, and I've watched them, like, basically Bisher from the desk, like Bisher's price action update. Like, I love them, right? And I'm interested, because again, this is genuinely my asset class that I love. So when you do that, but you'll say, oh, I've heard you on a podcast, and Bitcoin, because it was recently 120,000, it's dropped to 80. That's when Ryan and I lump summed some cash in, because we were like, fantastic, versus just DCAing, dollar cost averaging but I remember hearing you say, oh, we've had a lot of calls, investors saying, what should I do? Should I buy? Should I hold? And I was like, they accept calls like that? Like, you can't call an exchange and basically seek advice ultimately. And so do you like, is that a service essentially? Like people can pick up the phone and say, what should I do?
Yeah, we want to be able to provide people guidance and insights to make sure that they're deploying their capital in the best way possible. And every person's case is a little bit different. So someone who may have bought $100,000 worth of Bitcoin at 120 and has another 100K to deploy when we're at 70, there's so many ways we can actually hit that trade. Are we going to go in one trade? Are we going to put it on the limit? Putting it on limit means that the price is at 70, but we target 65. And then when 65,000 happens, we fill the order. So there's so many ways we can actually take care of clients, because most people go into an exchange, see a price, and then they buy. But we can do things from either market orders, like just what we described, limit orders, which is when you decide to buy at a lower price, but there is the risk of not getting filled, right? So if we're at 70 and we just run higher and you don't get that 65, you don't get that price. So we have to be quite tactful in how we deploy capital and at what prices we do it to maximize our clients' entry points and acquisition price as well. And so more recently, when Bitcoin went above 75K, I said to the guys on the desk, I said, no more limit orders, market orders only for the next 2 weeks, because we're about to go on like Donkey Kong. And I said, 75K break, let's just run it hard. We're going market orders only for the next 2 weeks. Clients can still obviously be self-directed and choose how they wish to trade, because as a broker, we won't take your funds and then trade as we see fit. We'll wait on your instructions. But if you say, what do I do? And I'm saying it's market orders for the next little while, then people listen to us and we take advantage of the trust they give us by giving them excellent entry prices.
And you do know better, like, you don't go to well, I question everybody, but I'm like, you don't go to a doctor and be like, I know better. And I'm like, sometimes I do, but right. Like you guys are, it's just rare. I think because I've been in the space for it's not that long, but like almost 10 years.
Yeah. It's a while now.
It's just not an experience I've ever had, because obviously I have always, and amazing, like I've dealt with exchanges. And so it's nameless, faceless, ultimately, like, and higher risk, I think, as well, in essence. So it just feels like a very all-encompassing, safe space to come into. The other thing I love about you, Bisher, is you guys will, on your like price market updates, like on those things, you make calls. Like you just did it. You were like, no more like limit orders, market action, like go, because you will say like, this is where I think it's going. This is where I think, if it breaks this price, it's going to run. So where do you see, because I know everyone's going to be like, I know you talk about this all day, every day, and you're probably like, everybody knows, but not necessarily my audience, right? So where do you think Bitcoin has broken? So it's just hit that resistance of 75,000 and it's broken that?
Yep, went to 82, we're trading at 81 at the moment. So in terms of where I anticipate things over the next little while, I always try to give forecasts based on short, medium, and long term and probabilities, because a lot of the times when people deal with finance professionals, they can oftentimes talk with a lot of certainty or absolutes, like this is what will happen and this is what's going to be the outcome. And so when I have my conviction and I put forward my trade calls, it comes from a place of probabilistic thinking, which is always a really good way to approach financial markets in general, regardless of what your asset class is, whether it's crypto, equities, property. Having that ability to say, okay, this is what could happen and what is the likelihood of it occurring, and then that decides how much risk you take. So for example, on a risk adjusted basis, it was actually a little bit easier to buy for our investors Bitcoin at 70,000 on the come up, rather than buying Bitcoin at 70,000 as we were falling through those levels and eventually we hit 60K. So what I try to do is I go, okay, what I anticipate over the next little while. Let's say short term is the next month to 3 months. Where do I see Bitcoin ending up by the end of Q3? I think Bitcoin's got a likelihood of hitting 104, 105,000 USD. Reason being is that we had 5 months of just rampant selling between October of 2025 till pretty much February of 2026. It was just one-way price action, down, 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 take a breather, then down, down, down again. So when you have that relentless amount of sell-off, there's no more sellers, right? A marketplace of any description is made of buyers and sellers. And sellers got completely exhausted because they have just been doing nothing but selling for the last 5 months. We've also got the Clarity Act, which is a regulatory or law that will be passed in the United States, which by its name is going to give a lot more clarity to how people can deal and trade with digital assets and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. When that happens, there's going to be a wave of institutional adoption that comes into the space, which should then drive the price a lot higher. Medium term, we're talking 12 to 18 months. I anticipate Bitcoin to be over 200,000 US dollars, because that would be at the end of the US-Iran war would be resolved by then. Clarity Act would have passed, and we'd be at the start of a new 4-year cycle. So you'll hear this a lot in Bitcoin and crypto, that markets move in cycles. The 4-year cycle is the most common one, associated with the halving cycle. And we're due for another halving in 2028, which in 2027, I'm anticipating a massive run up in anticipation of that halving event, which has historically been quite a bullish event for digital assets, because it's essentially meaning the amount of Bitcoin that comes into circulation cuts in half. It's not that the supply itself reduces, but the new emission or the new amount of coins that comes into circulation drops in half. And so if the demand stays the same and the supply is cut in half, then the price adjusts to the upside. So we've seen this time and time again. And so that lines us up to the 200K. And then long term, sky's the limit, because I don't believe in fiat currency, because ultimately Aussie dollars, US dollars are printed out of thin air. So they don't have a bottom. And so therefore Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies don't have a top, because the denominator in which they're trading against, which is Aussie dollars or US dollars, are printed ad infinitum. And so when something is printed that aggressively, they're going to get devalued. And so the assets that they trade against, property, shares, Bitcoin, crypto, goes up over time.
Yeah. And 100%. And it's funny, because I'm like, how many times you wouldn't be able to count them, have you been told over the last even year, actually, maybe let's say year, since it has been sell, that this is it. This is the end. It's going to zero. Like how?
It's so funny that you mentioned that, Anna, because there's a website called bitcoinisdead.com, which is a website that records every time the Financial Times or The Economist has declared Bitcoin dead.
Yeah.
And there's been articles since 2014 declaring that Bitcoin is dead over the last 12 years, and more frequently it's been happening. But to be fair with you, now this is what's crazy, is that this last 6 months has been quite different, in the sense that people aren't saying that Bitcoin is dead. They're just saying, I like Bitcoin, I'll buy it lower, right? Which is a really different mentality than what I've been used to, because in previous cycles, whether it was 2018 or 2022 bear markets, people are like, nah, that's it, it's over, it's finished, it's dead, it's going to zero. Now people were being bearish, but they weren't saying it's going to zero. They're like, oh, it's going to go to 40,000. It's going to go to 50,000. So people are now accepting that Bitcoin's here to stay. They just discount its future value, right? Which is perfectly fine, because I always say this, the most bearish individuals are the bulls in disguise, because they want the price to be lower so that they can buy more. So it's a really funny little journey. But yeah, people have been telling me Bitcoin's dead for a long time, but not this time around. They're saying Bitcoin's going lower.
Interesting. That's really cool to hear, the psychology of money. Look, I've still got a friend who, and I get sent his reels from my community, because he's very well known, amazingly and rightfully so, in the shares space. Very bullish on shares. That's his asset class, and I really respect him in it and for it. But he is like the loudest voice on that. It's a Ponzi scheme and it's going to zero. And I'm like, I actually think, having watched him and like loving him and respecting him, I actually think in the psychology of Bitcoin and money and markets now, there is an enormous element of ego with it. And I actually think some of the more louder, like convicted voices of it's going to zero, and it's just like, actually, you're just really filthy dirty, that you didn't get in, sincerely, that you actually just didn't get in when you did hear about it, because you are more intelligent and you understand money and markets better than most, and you didn't get in at the 3,000, 4,000, 20,000, 16,000, and now what was our bottom this time? 60,000. Like
it's true. And what I'll highlight there, Anna, is that, I don't want to be tribal with my investments as much as I'm relentlessly bullish on Bitcoin. I speak to people and I've got good mates of mine who are in the property game. I've got good mates of mine who are in personal finance and credit. I've got good mates of mine who are in the stock market as stockbrokers. I don't go out for the pub and, catch up for beers and then say, you sell stocks, mate. How can you believe in stocks? You got to buy Bitcoin. And they don't rag on me saying, how can you sell Bitcoin, mate? You got to buy BHB and Rio. Like, markets are not a place for, and I love that you use the word ego. There's no place for ego. There's no place for tribalism. Markets are just markets. A financial instrument and a financial product can do a lot of good things in your portfolio as long as you understand what purpose it serves in your asset selection. And that's it. Whether you buy shares or crypto or Bitcoin, if you do choose to buy crypto and Bitcoin, I hope you do it through me. But regardless of what you choose to buy, understand what you're buying it for and what purpose it serves in your portfolio. And the best portfolios are the ones that are constructed with intention. So if you own a couple of properties and you have a bit invested in the stock market and you got a couple of Bitcoin, then that's good, because if you've developed that view that those are the assets that you want to hold, you'll have the conviction to hold them through drawdowns and corrections, rather than always just panic selling and moving in and out of positions. Because the only person that benefits from you buying and selling all the time is your broker. And I'll tell you something, guys, I don't need another Porsche. I've already got one. I don't need a second one. So trading less is in your interest and not in mine. But I actively tell people, trade less and invest more with conviction. That's really what it comes down to.
I love that. And I can mirror to you. So having done that asset series, you're like sort of a part of this now, but just a little later. Having done the asset series, I did sit with like some of the best in Oz, like with property, crypto. I wish I got you, but property, crypto, I have now. And shares. And then essentially, like Ryan, he's Kiwi as well, Maori boy, fiance. He's 44. He had kids at 20. Like, he was the guy that just like was committed to like the mortgage and cash, high interest rate cash bank accounts for his kids. So all of his kids have trust funds. He'd paid off his whole mortgage. So I had like him on to talk about like the everyday sort of Australian battling through it with the JOB, and then everyone else. The most interesting thing that I experienced in all of that is every time I sat across, and this is why I actually love and respect you the most, every time I sat across from the expert, they would off camera, and I went on the mic and I fully shared all this, and I didn't name names or anything, but I said every single person put down the other asset class. And I said, so what I actually learned the most, even though shares and crypto are mine, I am so passionate about wealth building across the board for the everyday Australian. This is not what I do. My businesses are completely different to that, but I love money. And I always say money loves me. And I've put myself—
Good, you got an abundance mindset.
Yeah, and I've put myself in a privileged position. As you knew, I've quickly shared off camera, like I grew up in poverty and government housing. So I want to help those people still. And I said to them, sitting in this chair with this privilege, I said, it was remarkable to me to learn more than ever, whatever you choose it with conviction and know your asset, trust your asset, love your asset, and back your asset. And actually, there's no right or wrong, but if you have done it, with intention, with responsibility, so you're not selling and making bad decisions in shit markets, you can have an incredible position.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's really important to realize that when you approach financial markets or wealth building, you can't be tribalistic about it. You just have to approach it with a completely open, rational, logical mind. There's no such thing as right or wrong. It's just there's timing, there's risk management. And this is why I really, really advocate for our service. Not just because I'm the owner operator, not just because obviously I benefit from people trading with me, but because when you've got somebody on the other end of the line that understands position sizing, that understands risk management, that understands portfolio diversification, we don't necessarily have to be your one trusted source, but we can be a part of your wealth strategy. And then when you pick up the phone and go, hey, should I be adding more? Should I be looking to reduce some risk here? We called everybody in November, for example, 2025, and we said, get out of all altcoins. If you want to continue to hold altcoins, you can, but get out of altcoins and only hold Bitcoin and gold right now. That was the only thing that we said.
Great advice.
And we said, look, it's up to you whether you wish to proceed or not. We're not going to oblige you. A lot of our investors did take us up on that offer, and then they didn't have to weather the 70, 80, 90% drawdowns that the average investor had to go through with their altcoins, because we just exited out of that. Now, there are some that are starting to look really attractive again. I really like Solana and Hyperliquid, for example. Again, I'm not advising that you just drop everything into it, but a small tasteful allocation to some of these assets have got incredible upside is the way we do it. And we talk about position sizing versus risk. So if we think that something is going to do well and run incredibly hard, we don't actually have to put in a bunch of capital into it. A little bit goes a long way. Whereas we'd much rather size up our investments that, say Bitcoin or gold, might double, maybe triple over the next 4, 5, 6 years. People go, oh, only a 2x, only a 3x. That's not enough. But that means that if we have a high conviction or a high probability setup that it can double, it means that you can size the investment a lot more. So think little things like understanding how to size your investments relative to the risk of that trade is something that we share with our investors as well. And that's what I like trying to unpack, is that this isn't stuff that you learn in high school. You don't learn this in university. You have to get it from somebody who's been sacrificing 12 years of their entire existence into trading this stuff 18, 20 hours a day. And so I'm very fortunate that Bitcoin's a 24/7 market, crypto's a 24/7 market, because the amount of experience that I can get in a 7-day week trading this stuff exceeds that of somebody who's been in like TradFi for 20, 30 years, because I'm just always in it. So that's something that I like sharing, is that you don't have to overinvest to get good results. You just have to know how to size your investments relative to the risk that you're taking on.
Yeah, which I just love. Can I ask Bisher, personally, have you ever done day trading?
I have.
Yeah. I only ask because Ryan's learning right now, and I love it. So I've loved markets and money since pretty much 2017, and it's just a different ballgame. I'm just watching him, but I was laughing when you were just saying it. Like, I love Bitcoin because it's a 24-hour market, 7 days a week, and I'm like, yeah, it's like, so the markets for gold close at like 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever on a Friday in Australia. So the boys in the stock exchange can go to the pub. Literally, but then, so Ryan sort of does gold all week and then Bitcoin over the weekend. And I'm like, oh God, it's so, but it gives you it just gives me a different level of understanding, essentially, and respect and interest and curiosity into money and markets.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I do like to make a distinction between trading and investing, though.
Yes.
Which is, investing is for everyone. Everyone should be investing. 15-year-old kids who are first getting their first job should be learning how to invest. 85, 90-year-olds who are just enjoying their twilight years should be investing, and everything in between. Whether you're working in a job just over broke, or you're in a high-paying executive role, or you're running your own business, you should be investing in financial assets. But then trading, I think that's more of a niche specialization, and that's more of a career than it is for everyone. I see trading and risk management and positions, being an allocator in the space, as more of a profession that has to be treated as such. But I believe investing is passive and is for everyone. So trading is more active. You have to know how to manage your risk. You can lose the whole kit and caboodle. Whereas with investing, if you're investing in index funds, Bitcoin, bit of gold, bit of property, like that's going to be around for the next 50, 60 years. So that is for everyone for sure. But trading is a bit more niche and specialized. So whilst I'm always going to be an advocate for investing, I'm not always going to advocate for people to trade. Of course, you can do it, and I encourage people to learn, but do so with like demo trading accounts or paper trading accounts where there's no real capital at risk, but you're trading in the market and getting exposed to real prices. But everybody should be invested, that's for sure.
Agreed. No, I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm getting a lot of questions about Ryan's journey, and I'm like, I wouldn't recommend it for, especially women. I'm like, it's too cooked for your nervous system. Like, you've got to be, it's not. And people ask me, would you do it? No, I wouldn't. But I always say to him, you go eventually make your money, and I'll make that money make money in investing. Yes. Like, it's just, you can't go wrong with investing. It's funny because I ran a money and investing masterclass back in November, just again off the basis of loving to have these conversations, essentially. And 1,300 people registered, paid masterclass, and over 500 people joined live. It was incredible. And anyway, a few mothers amazingly obviously got their younger daughters to watch with them, which was incredible because they were like, they're not teaching this in schools. And it was really basic. I talked about the history of money and markets. I talked about dollar cost averaging. I talked about beating inflation. I talked about inflation. It was very like, and then I talked about crypto and shares because that's my asset class I love. But a few young women messaged me and said, like 15 to 18-year-olds, obviously off the back of watching with their mums on Instagram, and said, if you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would you tell her? And I was like, start investing today. That's literally what I said to every single one of them. I said, it would, at 15, I don't care, 16, 17, 18, far out my life would be even more remarkably different if I had have just dollar cost averaged from that age, like just steadily and safely investing.
The power of compounding is genuinely misunderstood. It's a superpower. If you understand compounding, and it's like, it doesn't have to be triple digit or 3x, 4x returns to give you a good rate of return. So like, let's say over the years, let's say 5 years, you've managed to grab together 100 grand, right? Or over a decade, you've managed to put together 100 grand. If you invest at $100,000 and you achieve a modest 10% average annual rate of return, then that $100,000 over 10 years becomes 240K, right? Over 20 years becomes 750,000, and then over 30 years becomes 1.7 million at just 10% a year untouched, right? That is amazing. And that's on an average rate of return. So you can have bad years in between where, you have years where you're down 4%, but other years you're up 20%. I'm talking averaged out 10%, right? I'm not even saying you're achieving 10% a year. Let's say you do that, you can end up with $1.7 million on 100K down over 3 decades. If you started at 15, 20, 25, that means that by the time you're in your 50s or heading into your 60s, you've got this $2 million, $3 million, $4 million retirement fund that is outside of even your industry fund or anything other, your property. It's just this amazing nest egg that can then allow you to live your best life. You can go to the Grand Prix, you can have some good fun, you can go to the footy, you can do whatever you want because you're not having to worry about some sort of government pension to tie you over every fortnight. You're free, you're independent, and you can choose to live life on your own terms. And the more you invest, then the better that compound becomes, because we just gave 100,000, but let's say you invested 200,000, 300K, 400K, and that doesn't mean that you have to get together that lump sum of 300, 400,000. We want people to take care of themselves properly, safely, and compound their investment over time. That's it.
Yeah. Was it Einstein? What's the famous quote? And they said on the eighth day, God created compound interest. And like Einstein, I think it is. Yeah, the eighth wonder of the world. Like I think it is Einstein's quote. He said the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. And that's a huge element of this. Right. I want to go now because I know you're very incredibly well versed in this because I've heard you and I'm not yet. And that's like, it's my next job. So I love it. I'm literally going to be learning with the listener, but I am getting sent a lot of reels on this. And it was an enormous reason why I was attracted to crypto in the beginning, which was less government control and less government intervention and essentially less government legislation. What I know that there is legislation that has recently come, and you actually did you're probably the only voice where I was like, okay, you're changing my mind a little bit. Like you were quite you were like, this is a good thing because So I'm going to sort of broadly hand off this big question to you essentially around crypto has been renowned, Bitcoin, Ethereum, especially those two, as more of a decentralized, break out of the matrix essentially. I suppose that was in the beginning, but less government control and attachment to it. And now the government is essentially coming in and legislating with it. And there is a new piece of legislation I heard the other day that Labor's bringing in that I know nothing about. But if you want to touch on that and you know more about it, feel free. But what's your take on all of this? Like more broadly, how do you feel essentially about this asset class that was more renowned as government hands-off becoming more government hands-on?
So there's a really important distinction that I want to make so that their fears and their concerns can be at least alleviated a little bit. So let's break it down. There could be any number of legislation that is passed, whether it's in America, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Europe, Africa, God knows wherever it is. But let's say here in our bone backyard, April 1st, Digital Asset Framework Bill got passed. What that is regulating is the service providers. What that is regulating is those who issue cryptocurrencies, like altcoins and all that kind of stuff. What that's regulating is people who issue stable coins. What's that regulating is exchanges and brokers like myself and custodians. It means that there's a certain standard, a certain operating standard that people need to be at to be considered a digital asset service provider. Just like how there's a certain standard that's required to be a mortgage broker, a financial advisor, a stockbroker, a real estate agent, even, there's certain standards that need to be met to be considered a broker, an agent, a whatever it is in whatever asset class you're in. So, but it doesn't change the decentralized nature of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, these digital assets. That's just these assets operate outside the system, if you will, but those who are providing services, brokering, exchanging, custody services, lending services, means that they have to operate at government issued standards, which means that the everyday investor or the retail participant has a certain level of protection as to who they're dealing with, right? So if they've got an Australian financial services license, you can look up who they are, you can see who the responsible managers are, you can see who the operators are. There's the days of fly by night being a hole in the wall exchange no longer exists. You have to put your reputation on the line. You have to put your license on the line in order to deal. But that does not change anything to do with the assets themselves. They still are permissionless, freedom money. You can move it on your own terms. If you've got your own cold storage, it's still cold storage. You can nobody can take it from you. Nobody can seize it from you. It just means that the service providers are regulated. That's all that it is.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's phenomenal because, as I said, like taking full responsibility, this is the stuff I would normally absolutely look into pre having someone like you on, and genuinely just for my own interest because it is my asset class. But I was not lazy, but in essence, because I was like, I know Bish is going to know and I'm going to love asking him and I'm going to learn from the best. Like I am my listener right now. So it's interesting because there is a lot of misinformation out there then that even I am reading and seeing because that's not what I took as that piece of legislation, which I knew got passed.
Yeah, so there's also things that are coming in that should be concerning. Like, for example, there's this thing coming in called travel rule. What travel rule is that as a service provider, we have to share information between other service providers. So, for example, a client comes to Stormrake from CoinSpot. They're transferring assets from CoinSpot to Stormrake. They've chosen to work with us as opposed to CoinSpot. CoinSpot has to put together a package of information and send it to us and say, hey guys, heads up, these clients' assets are coming to you outside of just the transaction ID. And same goes for us. So if somebody's trying to withdraw from us to Bybit, we have to send information to Bybit about not the person's identity, not the person's holdings, not the person's documents. We would never share that. But the travel rule is saying you need to share the transaction details with the institution that is receiving the funds. So similar to how the SWIFT system works. Mm-hmm. The SWIFT system works if I was to do an international wire transfer from my bank account to a recipient bank account in the US, they share a bunch of information about that transaction between the two institutions. And that's what's coming into effect. So a lot of people are conflating that means that it's the end of privacy, it's the end of cold storage, it's the end of all this. It's not. What it is just that institutions and service providers within the country are going to be talking to each other a lot more. Just like how if you send from Combank to ANZ or ANZ to Westpac, all these institutions talk to each other about the transaction itself, not the person's identity. So it's still not good. I'm not advocating for it, but it just means that service providers and institutions are going to be operating like banks, but your personal assets are still going to be private and discreet. Like, for example, I just came back from Vegas and I just funded the entire trip on Bitcoin. I was spending Bitcoin there. I converted Bitcoin to cash. I had a great time there. But all of those transactions were private and discreet. I had 10,000 US dollars that I was able to convert from Bitcoin into USD. And then that's it. I had the entire trip funded.
Yeah.
But that was private. That was discreet. Nobody stopped me. Nobody could do anything about that transaction from going through because it's Bitcoin to Bitcoin, peer to peer, right? That's exactly what it's meant to operate as, right? I bought this pin in Vegas as well. It's a Bitcoin pin, did it in Bitcoin. Nobody's going to stop that transaction.
Love.
But, we have to be aware of what that legislation is, because there are some concerning aspects to it, but I want to focus on what the real challenges are rather than the interpreted challenges are.
Yeah, love. Okay, that's really fascinating. And I am going to go, I like to read the legislation, so I will go read it. But as always, like I've been having a lot of people send me things and I'm like, just look into it. Like use your sovereign, responsible mind and choose to discover what this means without just believing a 30-second reel that is probably misinformation above what's actually occurring. But you touched on something that I wanted to unpack and you literally just did it. But what I wanted to say is like ultimately what I learned back in 2017 and what made me fall in love with it back then, the blockchain, decentralization, etc., was that the ultimate goal is for it to be peer-to-peer and actually away from government institutions, etc. Now we have to purchase it. We can mine it. There are definitely options like that out there, but ultimately, what I love, and I mean, I bought my Porsche.
That's it. That's just Bitcoin. That's it.
Yeah.
So you can receive, send. That's all it is. Me and you can now trade with each other peer to peer. That's all that it is. I think people overcomplicate it.
They do. And this is what I want to say. So that I remember when I bought my Porsche, I bought it in Ethereum, like peer to peer. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So because the person that sold it is crypto bullish and actually was the
Did you get like more of like an SUV Macan, or did you go for the sports, like more 911 or something like that?
What have I got? Macan, I say.
Oh, beautiful. They're so punchy. I got one for my wife. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, that's my mum car. I was like, baby, are the baby seats going to sit in this? I don't give a, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not getting an SUV. And this was the point and this was the power, right? I'm not trying to tax evade. It's nothing like that. The whole ethos and ideology of crypto is for it to become and be, and go read the Bitcoin Standard, everybody. This is what I always tell everyone. Peer-to-peer. So yes, there is going to be interventions, I am sure, no doubt, because the government likes to put its sticky little fingers on everything. But ultimately, if you can, in my opinion, and I've had this since 2017, find a reputable, I used to say exchange, but now, brokerage like Stormrake, invest DCA or lump sum, or have the conversation with your private broker, everyone, and then get it into your wallet, cold or hot, whatever. And ultimately, the more people that are in crypto, it becomes that peer-to-peer. So I've said to this particular person, I said, when I want to buy a property and I want to do it cash, basically millions of dollars, I was like, would you accept Ethereum on that or Bitcoin? And they were like, absolutely. So that's what I want. I'm constantly trying to find people that want to barter. I mean, anyone I use, my podcast editor, he's only paid in Ethereum, right? So that's what I love about it. So away from all of that legislation still, and like, you having to send, or CoinSpot having to send my transaction thing to Stormrake, etc. I'm like, well, ultimately, once I keep funneling all my DCA in and my lump sum into my wallet, it's then my cash. What I do with it is private. What I do with it, that's what people have to understand.
And again, I really want to hone in on this, because legislation could be good or bad, and that's one thing, but you can't legislate Bitcoin. You can't. It's impossible, guys. This is what people need to understand. You cannot legislate Bitcoin. Bitcoin, there's no CEO, there's no executives, there's no board, there's no person to put the pressure on. Bitcoin is a network, just like the internet. But the internet is open and permissionless and free for people to use. Data is free to use. However, you have to oftentimes access it through a service provider, right? And then there's things like VPNs, and you can do things to make yourself a bit more discreet and all that kind of thing, right? So that way your browsing or your transactions online are a little bit more private. This is what people need to understand about Bitcoin. You can't stop it. You can't legislate against it. You can legislate for the service providers. You can legislate for the custodians. You can legislate the issuers, absolutely, because there's a board, there's an executive, there's a responsible manager, there's somebody to talk to and put in prison if they do the wrong thing. But Bitcoin as an asset that's decentralized and permissionless, you can't put it in four walls. You can't put it in a box, right? And so when we're trading with one another, that's it. It's outside the system. And that's what I think I really want to drive home, is that if anything, it just makes my life harder. I have to have more compliance costs, more standards, more insurance, more compliance, which is all good stuff, but it just means my requirements increase significantly, and the end user has a better and a much higher standard of service being offered, and a much higher guarantee that the people that they're dealing with are reputable and are of a certain standard. Whereas your Bitcoin is still open, it's still permissionless. You can pay your editor in Ethereum, you can pay your editor in USDT, you can trade with each other in Bitcoin. I can buy this pin in BTC, all of that. It's all free and permissionless, right? Yep. It's open money. Whereas the service providers, they're the ones that are getting legislated.
Yeah, love this. I mean, I know this and I love this, but I honestly thought, like, look, the government will always try and stick its little fingers, like I said, but this is what people have to understand. And I always say this, I'm like, they don't own and they will never own like Bitcoin ever. They can't own the Ethereum blockchain. They can come and create their own, which they're doing with CDCs and so on and so forth. I think we are moving to digital currency, good or bad, right or wrong. But I'm like, yeah, but you can still play in the decentralization of it outside of the bank or the government's digital currency that they're going to create, and good on them. And that's where people get confused. They're like, oh, well, it's all blown to shit now because the government's involved. I'm like, no, the government's involved because the pioneers have got it to the point where the government want to get involved, but they're going to create their own. That's their separate blockchain. That's their current digital currency. Just because they're entering the arena doesn't mean that they then own Bitcoin or they then own the Ethereum blockchain or whatever.
You can't own a network, right? You can't own an asset like Bitcoin unless you have the private keys for it. And so that's really the important distinction, is that the government has already had their grubby little fingers in Bitcoin and digital assets for over 10 years when they legislated cryptocurrencies as property assets. So they treat it with capital gains tax as well. So they've been involved, right? But what they haven't been involved in is the managing of the network, the issuance of the Bitcoin. That's all run decentralized and permissionless, and there's no central authority that they can then come to and say, you need to do this and you need to disclose these records. But, me and you, Anna, we can trade in Bitcoin with each other all day long. We can then, I can buy your car, you can buy my car, we trade Bitcoin, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? There's no one that's going to stop that transaction, and there's no one that's going to tell you yes or no. Right? Yeah. You don't have to ask for permission. And I think that's a really powerful position to put yourself in. And I know a lot of people try to sometimes conflate, Bitcoin with other central bank digital currency and other forms of digital control. But you got to choose how you use this tool, right? Like I describe Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrencies as tools. You can use the tool to your advantage, or you can have it being used against you, right? And so I say, I'd rather use it to my advantage than have it enforced upon me. And that's where you have that high agency action to then take care of yourself and not wait for something to happen to then try to take action.
Exactly. And this is exactly what I've been saying to people. Even if the banks bring in their own digital currency and, I don't know, I'm pretty woo. Like I love theories that come true. I don't even call them conspiracies. Just I love to speculate on the theories that come true eventually. But I say to people, even if all of those things happen, the 15-minute cities or the universal basic income or the digital currencies that the banks and governments create, you can play in that if you want to. But if you have invested intelligently and calmly and, know, trust, love, and back your asset, if it's crypto, for example, which it is for me, then you're outside of that system anyway. You may have to be forced to get a universal basic income that will be a digital currency, where say they may stop you from trying to travel or buy a car or do whatever else. But if you've got a free asset like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they're my two like people, then you don't have to play in that system. You are still free over here with your cold or hot wallet outside of that system. So they can try to enter the arena and the industry of crypto essentially, but you remain sovereign and separate from it, which I love.
It's beautiful, and it's a wonderful message to get behind, because I'm always happy to talk about Bitcoin on the investment side, the average annual growth rate, the compounding. I'm happy to talk about it. But what brought me into this space first and foremost is the fact that I'm bullish on sovereignty. I'm bullish on freedom. And so that's what attracts me to it. I'll be the first person to say, if that thesis changes, I'm somebody who stakes my reputation on online and in person every single day. If that thesis changes, I will tell people. I'll be the first person to say, guys, the thesis has changed. It's no longer what it is. Well, let's get out and move on to the next thing. Like I said, I'm not evangelical about it.
Yeah, you're not tribal.
I'm not tribal, right? I'm just gonna stick to it. And as long as that thesis is true, I'm gonna continue to advocate and position my clients in it. Once the thesis changes, or the reality or the facts on the ground change, I'm the first person to say, hey, this has changed. This is what we can do. Because for me, I'm a broker and a trader through and through. I've been doing it for 12 years. I don't care what I trade, as long as it is aligned with my mission and is aligned with my ethos. I'll position my clients into it. So I'll be the first person to say, hey guys, this is no longer the case. But for now, it still is.
Yeah, which I love. And that is a beautiful, beautiful wrap up, essentially, because we are on the hour. I'm just so grateful for you. The thing that I have loved about this conversation is just your authentic heart, but ultimately, like, everything we've touched on, the thread of it remains the same. You know, you were saying off cuff, like, I'm not tribal. I'm not it's not the Messiah, etc. And you know, the examples you gave, it's like if you have property, amazing, which is so rare, because I find people that are in their asset class, especially real estate people, are like, you're fucking crazy if you don't have, you know, whereas it's like, well, no, you get to pick an asset class, love it, know it, trust it, you know, leverage yourself across a few, do whatever you want to do. So that was really beautiful. And just, the passion that I can feel when we actually do get into that sovereignty conversation and that freedom conversation, which is what brought me into this space, you know, almost 10 years ago. So I am so grateful, Bisher. It's very rare, but I'm going to record very rare, an intro off of this, like everyone will hear this now, explaining that I have absolutely tethered myself to you guys, and just to say, like, I have. So, well, the boys reached out. I couldn't say no to the boys.
They won't disappoint you. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, the boys reached out. Yeah, the boys. So, well, and what I love about me and what I love about this relationship essentially is I was already referring people, anyone that came to me saying, you know, my bank's effed me over, but I really want to, you know, buy this asset, etc. I'm like, well, just reach out to Stormrake. They're a really great company, you know, etc. So I am going to record off to explain that I am absolutely a proud affiliate of Stormrake. And so if anyone, I don't even know how it fully works yet, but I know that if anyone comes to you guys, they can mention Anna. I need to read the email.
Mention Anna or use your link, because you'll have both a link or a mention, because we're old school guys. Like, we want people to know who we're working with and where they're.
Of course.
Because some people who come to us from like our trading communities, we talk to them as traders, and some people who come to us from our investment communities, we talk to them as investors. So we need to know who we're dealing with and where they've come from, so that way I don't start talking to like a 45-year-old mum who's done their first investment. I'm like, so have you seen that we're just trading over the 200 moving average? We're just reclaiming that 82K handle. They're like, what is this guy talking about? So we want to talk to our audience the right way.
That's beautiful. I love that so much. Well, I will put my link then. I know I have it. And can I just say, like, I love that I don't know all this, because it really wasn't about that on getting on this podcast and conversation. I've wanted to talk. I'm like, imagine if I could get Bisher. And then when Sam literally reached out, I didn't even ask. He goes, you know, Bisher's been on a few podcasts. I'm like, brother, I know, I've listened to them all. And I said, you know, would he come on mine? And he was like, absolutely. So it was actually genuinely about bringing the asset class that I am sincerely most passionate about to the people, from someone that lives and dies, you know, for now.
For now, absolutely.
For now, buy it. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Bisher. I will wrap it up there. And if you were listening to this and you are interested and you do want to have a conversation and just even pick up the phone and have a chat to them about your investing options. I was going to say portfolio, but options. I will put the link in the show notes, but also say my name. And I
know you're a 2000s girl when you say that.
Yeah. I might even get my editor to like put that music in. But I will wrap it up there, you guys. Until next time, as always, stay wild.